What's up, y'all? What's good? Welcome to the What Up Doe Show. It's your boy Dame D, and I am back with another one. What's good, y'all? What up, Doe? Happy Monday to everybody. Want to say what up, Doe, to everybody out there on Facebook, everybody out there on YouTube and Instagram. We're gonna come in and we're gonna talk a little bit more about this Nolan Wales case, man. There's been more evidence that his friends do know exactly what happened to this young man, and I want to just give a thumbs up to everybody who's been on this case, everybody who's talked about this case, who kept this case alive. It's just been day after day that more evidence has been coming out, about what's been going on with what happened to this young man, and his friends definitely know what fuck happened to this young man. I have audio and video of a video I'm getting ready to play. You have what up, though, Jada Wanda? Give me your thoughts on what you have heard on this case, man. I got a video I'm getting ready to play. You have a forensic voice analyzer who broke down what was said on that case. But I'm getting ready to check my audio and video, make sure you guys can hear me first. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Getting ready to check that because we have been having some technical difficulties with our audio recently, but I look like everything is good. But yeah, man, I just want to say what up, though, to everybody, and make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button. Your boy is less than 50 subscribers away from 1K. I cannot do it without you guys hitting that subscribe button. So yeah, I just want to come in here for a quick little minute to give my thoughts to my piece on what's been going on, man. Listen, it's been a cover up from the beginning. His friends definitely knew what the fuck happened to him. We've been getting too much evidence from our people. They've been breaking this shit down. We've done more breaking down of this case than the fucking state have. And like I said in the beginning, I want to give thumbs up to everybody who's talked about this case, who kept this case alive, because they tried to sweep this case up under the rug, man. So look, I got this video I'm going to play real quick, and then once I'm done with that, I'll get back to commentary, because this was horrible. The videos and the pictures that we've been getting back, there's no way that these friends don't know what the fuck happened, and then after this analyzer broke this shit down, and this is shit that the police should have been investigating, that they should have been doing, but this woman did it on her own. She broke it down. So give me 1 second. So we're going to go ahead and show this video, and then I'll do commentary. But yeah, man, after watching this video, and I want to say fair use to this video, I want to give a shout out to Taylor House Publishing. He's been on it too. A lot of our podcasters who talk about things like that, they've been on it, but here's this video, man. This is no denying this woman, she spent her own money and trying to break down this what these young men and women were saying on that boat today that Nolan Wales died. But here we go.
Before I play this, I want to quickly explain what I did, what you're looking at on the screen, and why I chose to approach this audio the way that I did. As a professional audio engineer with experience in dialogue editing, dialogue cleanup, sound design, and post-production, I decided to work on that CTO call using traditional audio processing techniques rather than relying on any AI voice separation or AI enhancement. My goal was pretty much to preserve as much of the original recording as possible while making the quieter dialogue and background audio easier to hear. So I basically use techniques such as subtractive EQ, compression, gain adjustments, noise reduction, frequency isolation, and other traditional processing methods. So what I did was I separated Vicky, the CTO dispatcher, from Warren and the audio originating from the boat so that I can concentrate more closely on what was happening behind and around Warren, pretty much on the boat. And I specifically chose not to rely on AI because aggressive AI enhancements and voice isolation tools can sometimes introduce artifacts and distort the speech or create ambiguity around the sounds that were originally present. And for something this serious, I wanted my processing to remain as conservative as possible. You'll also notice time code and dialogue written on the side of the screen and pop up during each segment. That dialogue represents what I personally hear as an audio engineer while processing and repeatedly reviewing these sections. I'm pretty much providing it as a listening reference, not as a declaration that my interpretation interpretation is the only possible interpretation. And that's important. I want you to listen for yourself, use headphones if you have them, listen closely and decide with your own ears what you believe is being said. You can also return to the original unprocessed recording and compare directly with what you're hearing here.
All right, peace and blessings. Peace and blessing.
Okay,
all praises due to the Most High, and as Ephesians 5
and fast forward to the actual to the actual recording where you heard her breaking it down. But here we go.
My time code may not match the regular timestamp on the original uploaded video. And that's because I'm working inside a professional post-production timeline, a digital audio workstation, basically using simply time code, which in film, that's displayed in hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. Film and TV timelines are completely different from timestamps that you see when you're watching regular videos or when you're watching a movie and you hit pause. So basically the time code on the screen is there to identify the precise location within my working session, not to represent the elapsed timestamp displayed by the original video player. And I hope that makes sense. For this first video, I'm sharing only approximately 37 seconds of the call. I originally intended to continue much further, but once I separated the dispatcher from the boat and started concentrating exclusively on the background dialogue.
If you live anywhere here on the map, we can get you a brand new heating and air conditioning system.
Hearing became extremely difficult for me to process emotionally, and I needed to take a mental break. But I wanted to release this portion because some of the details that stood out most to me occurred very early in the call, like right at the top of the call. And so I'm gonna let the audio play, read my transcription if you want to reference, but don't allow it to determine what you hear. I want you to listen first, listen again, compare it with the original recording, and then judge it with your own ears. I hope this breakdown helps. And my
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership. Oh, shut the fuck up!
And we'll stop it right there before we.
Let me see. I think it's a little bit more to the video. I'm going to fast forward a little bit more and get to the second part. But yeah, you can hear them asking, "Is Nolan dead? Did you guys kill Nolan?" But here we go with the rest of the video.
And from the beginning, we'll break it down piece by piece. Can we cover it up? Yeah, I thought all about that.
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership. Oh, shut the fuck up!
And you notice
so I'm gonna go ahead and stop.
So
from right there, you can hear what's going on that boat, and from what you hear, there's no denying that these so-called friends know what the fuck happened to Nolan Wells. You know, this young man was, and what we don't know exactly is where he was murdered, but we know that on that boat ride, when them friends were calling for that emergency rescue because they so-called said the boat was sinking, we know that that young man was on the boat. We know that he was dead at that time, you know, and I'm going to say allegedly, you know, because, you know, this forensic analyst, she broke this shit all the way down, you know. And again, I want to give a shout out to Taylor Publishing House. He's been on top of it. You know, a lot of YouTubers, a lot of just podcasters has been keeping this story alive. The mainstream media has really just gotten on this case and really just started talking about it. Now you got Nancy Grace, on the scene, and what she's been really keeping it real. She's been really keeping it 100. But yes, what you heard is that voice forensic analyzer, she broke she took all the distortion away. She took what the friend was saying when he was calling and talking to the rescuer that was coming out there to help. Took all the distortion away, and what you heard was the friends basically talking about Nolan. Is Nolan dead? Bart, and it sounded like Bart may be the actual culprit, but you can hear the cover up, you can hear their planning. They actually even said this. Can we cover this up? So in my opinion, that's what they were doing with that phone call, trying to get help and rescue for Nolan. The opinion, the odds, wow, my bad. But yeah, in my opinion, man, it's definitely a cover up. It's definitely getting ready to be, especially after hearing what we heard today. She broke it down. And then we've also been having a lot of other people, and we'll get to that a little later, but there's definitely about to be indictments coming back. They've been breaking this shit down better than the state has, better than investigators who's been on this case. You know what I mean? So, it's definitely these so-called friends know exactly what the fuck happened. So the comment section is definitely open. I need for you guys to like, comment, subscribe, and share. I would definitely love to hear your opinions. I would love to hear your comments on this. This is a case that's definitely has, pretty much has the country split in half. Most people try to say it's not a racial thing, but it always be a racial thing when you're dealing with, a black man who dies in the hands of his so-called white friends. And that's what's been going on throughout the country. It's been more cases that's been coming up where you have black men and women that's been dying in the hands of their so-called white friends. This is an ongoing case. This has been going through the country. I just recently talked about a case not too long ago. I need to get my notes, because we've talked about so many of these cases that, I forget a lot of the names, but we just had, you just had a young man who was just out swimming with his so-called white friends, and these were teenagers. They drowned this young man, held him up underwater till he died, and they actually tried to cover that up, so it's been a lot of cover up throughout the summer, throughout the country, throughout the years, when you're dealing with, with African Americans who's dying through the hands of their so-called white friends. So that's what we're seeing here in Mississippi. We're seeing a bunch of cover up. We're seeing a bunch of lies, and we're just trying to see that they're trying to sweep this case up under the rug. But what's been going on, our people, we've been investigating this shit on our own. We're not letting this shit die out, because we know something terribly happened. Something happened wrong to this young man. This young man goes out there to celebrate, to have fun with his friends on the 4th of July and didn't make it back. Come the fuck on. You telling me if the shoe wasn't up on the other foot and it was, a white boy who died out there with a group of black guys, this case would have been busted open that first fucking week. The friends would have been investigated. They would have had them locked up one by one, interrogating them, trying to get answers to what was going on. If this shit happened to Becky, or Frank or some shit like that. You know what I mean? So look, I need for you guys to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Give me your thoughts on this situation. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts. Like I said, man, a lot of people that's been keeping these cases alive, knew from the beginning, man. We knew from the beginning that these friends were lying. They were trying to cover up because a lot of this shit just didn't make sense. My thing is, it really doesn't matter what this young man was murdered at, because he was murdered. We do know that, and it's been covered up from the beginning, from the friends all the way down to the medical examiner, all the way down to the friend's parents. I'm gonna read out a few comments. I got Megan Ham 462 said, "From people like you, yes, a lot of lies conspires. Not one lie have I put out there yet. We know this young man was killed. We know he was with a group of white boys. And you hear, if you listen to what this medical examiner broke down, you hear these friends conspiring on his death. He was dead when he was on that boat. They're telling him to wake up, Nolan. Is he dead?" So look, it's not me. I'm just putting out the facts that, most people, like me has been listening to and breaking down. And it's not just me, it's people with degrees and like this medical examiner. She broke that shit down. And like she said it brought chills to her body. It almost brought her to tears to hear what the fuck was going on with these white boys was trying to fucking get away with, So fuck you, Megan Ham. If you think a motherfucker's trying to spread lies, I'm just trying to spread the truth and keep this shit alive, because motherfuckers like you love for shit like this to be swept under the rug. So fuck you. It's people like you, that give, good white folks, a bad rap and a bad name, because you have a lot of white folks that's out here that's actually, trying to keep this story alive and see between the lies and the bullshit that these motherfuckers trying to pull. It's a bunch of bullshit. So fuck you. When motherfuckers, because if it was your brother or sister or mother or father or one of your loved ones that happened, you would want clarity and you would want to know what the fuck happened. And it's a bunch of lies that's been going on. They sent this young man, and it was just another medical examiner, black medical examiner, who embalms bodies. He broke it down. He talked about, he said it's very rare that a body comes back without the throat. And if it does, it's only due to circumstances where, the body may be, where it may be subject, where it may be disease or something like that, where it may hurt the people, the community, So other than that, there was no notes. They pretty much fucked up the second autopsy that the parents wanted done, and that was done purposely, So it's a lot of cover up. It's a lot of and I'm gonna read a comment. Lachey kindly said, "I agree with you, Pops." Yeah, most people do. It's only the shady, crooked white motherfuckers who don't want to see this case be solved correctly, and that's what's been going on for, since I've been here on this earth. It's a lot of cover-ups, but our people has been on this case. They've been trying to keep this shit alive, and people, we have to realize what's been going on. It's not just this case. These cases have been going on every day. It's just people like me and Taylor Publishing Houses, like Willie D, that's been talking about these cases, keeping them alive, because the mainstream media, they're not doing their jobs. They're, it's only when the shoe is on the other foot, when it's their people, they'll broadcast or they'll talk about it, So I'm going to continue to do my due diligence, talk about this case, bring it to the forefront, and bring it to you guys, because that's my job, is to bring information to the people, especially when there's some bullshit going on, and it's definitely some shady ass shit that's been going on, especially with the whole autopsy. They couldn't even correctly do their jobs because of what the medical examiner really originally did. They took his throat out, didn't send the fucking throat, so the second autopsy can clearly confirm if it was a fucking choking or anything, if they tried to hang him, because a lot of people think that he was either choked out or they tried to hang him, because as we know, there's been a lot of hangings going on throughout the country with a lot of our folks hanging, dying in hangings. And as we know, that's something that's been done to our ancestors that we look down on, and upon. So, it's been a lot of cases that these medical examiners have been calling suicides and things like that. And I want you guys to know, once the medical examiner called these cases suicides, there's no more investigation. So that's what's been going on with a lot of these cases that they call suicides. They know what the fuck they're doing. The case is closed. There's no more investigation, and it's closed. Unless there's some clear cut evidence for them to open these cases back up. So that's what's been going on, family. So look, I advise you guys to be careful. And it is what it is. I don't understand why white folks get frustrated or mad when we try to ring their alarm on what's going on with our people. My job is to inform people on what's going on, because a lot of people don't look at the news. A lot of people don't pay attention to what's going on, throughout the country, especially if it's not coming out through the mainstream media. But it's been a lot of black folks coming up dead, due through the hands of their so-called white friends. We know blacks are not hanging themselves. Most black folks can't even tie a motherfucking tie, let alone tie a noose that's going to be able to sustain and hold their weight. So when we hear shit like that, we know it's a bunch of bullshit. We know it's some funny, fishy shit that's going on behind that. And I just talked about a case where you had a young man that traveled down to Michigan to go to a festival, and he performed, and later on that night they found this young man hanging outside of his tent. It looked like they tried to fucking take his neck off, is what the sister said. And I'm glad that she spoke these words. She said this young man was not suicidal. He had everything to live for. He went down there and performed, and they found this man, dead. And he was amongst friends too, so you guys got to be you guys got to understand what's going on throughout the country, and it's not just in these southern states. We've talked about multiple cases, of black people coming up dead, hanging and things like that here in Michigan. You know what I mean? So it's not just in the South. I think they're systematically, killing us one by one, and trying to cover, well, not trying to, but covering it up in the disguises of these drownings, these so-called suicide hangings and things like that. So you guys got to be careful, man. We have a lot of, like I said, people that's talking about these cases and keeping alive, but you have to be smart when you're in situations, especially, when you're in large group gatherings with white folks. Don't be the only lone star, because this is what's been going on. They've been catching people by themselves, and when you got a group of people and you're by yourself, you're pretty much helpless. You know what I mean? So if you're going to be with a group of, white folks or friends, make sure you got that motherfucking thing on you. I tell you that, because, they're not just taking out people in mass, like in mass killings at once. They're systematically doing it one by one, like I said, under the disguise of drowning, so-called drownings and things like that. But most of these drownings, as we know, with the medical examiner down there in Mississippi, she's been most of these drownings that have been fishy, and the family thought that they were not drownings and things like that. This so-called medical examiner that did the case for this Nolan Wells case, she's already under scrutiny for mislabeling, a lot of cases that's pretty much that has to do with blacks that's dying under the dying through the hands of white folks, I should say. You guys got to excuse me. Got to get a little drink, been a little hoarse. Me kind of running my mouth all day. I was up earlier taking care of some business. But yeah, man, these so-called friends, this is what's going on, and it's just not it's not a coincidence. We have to really realize what's going on, folks. We see a lot of this stuff on social media, on the news, and just think that it's just a singled out case. No, this shit is planned. This shit has been going on for years. It never really stopped. Is what's really going on. We've just been on top of this shit. We've been trying to cover a lot of these cases because we know, as we know in the past, a lot of these cases go unanswered or they're labeled as suicides, and they go, pretty much no investigation on these cases. But nowadays we're going to make sure that we talk about this shit, because these were not friends. In all the cases that we've been hearing about blacks dying, while in the I'm just gonna say while in the arms of their so-called white friends, it's not a tragedy, man. It's actually in my opinion, it's something purposely that's been going on, and it's been going on throughout the country, especially the month of June and July. To me, and a lot of people have been talking about it. It's almost like some ritualistic type shit has been going on with our people, especially the month of July. It's been so many people that was found drowned and things like that, so you guys have to be mindful of these rituals that these people be doing, ritualistic things, but yeah, man, these friends are definitely getting ready to be indicted. The authorities down there have not, in Mississippi, they've definitely been covering this shit up, but like I said, due to people like Donetta Jones, the forensic analyzer, she broke that shit down. They did not try to do no shit like that. You know, they could have done that if they really wanted to hear what the fuck was going on. They could have did the same thing that this young forensic analyst did. She went and broke it down, and best believe, you know, it's going to be more people who's going to break and analyze that down, and I guarantee you they're going to come back with that same shit, the same voice findings that they found in that, you know. So look, I want to you know, I want to thank everybody, you know, like I said, who's kept these cases alive, who talked about these incidents, because that's where we go wrong, man. We sweep a lot of this shit is swept under the rugs, and most people going about their daily lives and don't think about what's going on. You know, we go out here, we travel along, or we travel in groups, you know, with people that, you know, we really can't trust, or you may not really even know. You know, so you have to be careful. It's an ongoing situation which has been going on to our people, and we have to do a better job at, you know, being conscious, at being aware, you know, of our so-called friends, man. You know, because like I say, at the end of the day, you know, when it's a group of white folks, they get to drinking. Ain't no telling what thoughts go through their mind, you know, or ain't no telling what they've already had planned. You know, in these cases that we've been talking about this year, throughout this month, you know, shows exactly what I'm talking about. You know, like and we can go back to last year. We talked about a case where it was a black woman who were hanging out with a group, and this was a group of white friends that she was hanging out with. They were drinking, and they found this woman dead the next day. They said that she fell over the balcony, over a 2-story balcony, and she died, but no one knew what exactly happened. You know, and that case went on unsolved. You know, so that's what's going on. And I'm gonna read out another comment at Lamage, the real Israel said it was already written. I hope I didn't tell your name. I don't have my glasses on, so sometimes it'd be hard for me to see a lot of stuff. But yeah, you know, I'm not gonna say it was written, man, you know, because a lot of this shit, these are some evil motherfuckers that has been planning this shit out. You know, let's just be real, man. This shit has been going on for since the beginning, since our people have been here. You know, it's been broadcast. It's being broadcast now. You know, through the mainstream media and now the media. You know, when you see Nancy Grace talking about a case, and normally Nancy Grace don't even pick up cases when it's, you know, primarily, you know, doing to black folks. You know, but this was the case that, you know, that the country was talking about, you know, that she could not overlook, you know, and this white woman, you know, normally she's not, you know, I'm just going to be honest, she's not for, you know, trying to solve cases that's, you know, with black folks, you know, but she's been breaking it down. She's been coming with facts. A lot of this stuff don't make sense to her, you know, and a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense to us. Yeah, well, and that's a whole nother conversation. Lamar, the real Israel, you know, and I'll read the comment. He said that's why you read the Bible, to know who and what you're dealing with. Yeah, you know, yes, you know, but you got to remember who wrote that Bible. You know, the people that control everything, the money and all that, they put a lot of this shit in the Bible. You know, so but that's another conversation. I definitely don't want to get off into that right now. You know, we're just talking about these so-called white friends that's you know, that's been covering up this whole situation with this Nolan Wells case. You know, it's clearly we heard what we heard on that tape when that analyzer broke it down. You can hear the friends actually saying, "Is he dead? Is he dead? Can we cover it up?" You know, so look, if the state of Mississippi, if the feds don't jump into this case immediately, you know, we know what's been going on. We know throughout the year that when it's dealing with blacks or minorities, the pretty much the justice system, you know, overlooks a lot of stuff, you know. But this time around, we're not going to let this shit slide. This young man had his whole life ahead of him, had a promising life, had 2 great parents, you know what I mean? So they deserve the answers to what happened to this young man, you know. And for these friends to come on TV, to come on podcasts and try to lie and talk about how they did not have nothing to do with this, and after listening to this voice forensic analyzer break this shit down, you know, they got a lot of answers to do. Well, a lot of people will beg to differ from you, Lamar, real Israel, you know, because the Bible was published and written by a white man, but look, that's another conversation. We're definitely going to get off into that. Like I said, those who control and have power, it's those who can put things in this so-called book and Bible that a lot of people, swear by. But like I said, that's another conversation. But like I said, man, these friends were not this young man's friends. That day on that boat ride, they definitely were covering it up. You can hear exactly, once that analyzer took out the background and took out all the noise, distortion that was going on, you can hear clearly what was saying. You had a white girl that was saying, Nolan, wake up. Is he dead? Is he dead? So yes, we heard what we heard. You cannot tell us we didn't hear what we hear. And that's the thing with, I'm just going to be honest with white folks. They try to make us seem like we didn't hear or we didn't see what we thought we see, but this time around, we're not going to let this shit slide. We're not going to let this shit ride. This young man, and even with the autopsy, they didn't even correctly do that shit right. It was clearly, blatantly, that they were trying to hide shit, with the whole lungs and stuff like that. If you wanted to see if this young man died if it was an accidental drowning, why not send the lungs, or why not release the results of what this young man had in his lungs, and clearly there was no water in the lungs, because if it was, they would have immediately released the lungs, the evidence, or what was inside of this young man's, or if it was water inside this young man's lungs, so they didn't do that. In my opinion, that's clearly they're trying to hide evidence on, that it wasn't a drowning, and then when the second autopsy, when they read that off, the throat, they didn't send the throat. So the second autopsy, who was the examiner who was doing that, could do his investigation. So therefore, pretty much what they were doing was going to make the second examiner's autopsy be inconclusive because of non evidence, no lungs to see if this young man had drowned, or no throat to see if any of the throat had been fractured, or if it was broken to see if this young man had been choked out or hung or anything like that. So look, man, I definitely need for you guys to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Give me your thoughts on this. I would love to hear your opinion. What do you think? At the end of the day, you have to watch who you call your friends, because this young man was out there with a group of so-called friends that he thought that was his friends, and at the end of the day, man, it just shows, people's real colors. If this was this young man's friends, we wouldn't even be talking about this case right now. We will be talking about court proceedings, how many years these young men and women are going to be looking at, because it was 7 people allegedly on this boat that they counted on that picture, and I feel sorry for this young man's parents. The mother, she's heartbroken, and I can feel, and I definitely feel for this, for the father, and only thing that they want is what really happened to, to this young man. And what parents wouldn't want that? What parents wouldn't want to know what happened to their 18-year-old young man who had a promising career? And this goes on throughout the country, and like I said, I've talked about multiple cases. I like over 10 cases that I talked about young men and women, and it's even been women that that they've been putting in these situations now. Tania, and I don't want to get her name wrong, but this was a young woman out of Michigan. She drove all the way down to Florida to celebrate Juneteenth. They found her body on June 18th. The day before Juneteenth, found her hanging dead. The mainstream media really didn't take coverage. They really didn't talk about that until weeks later. And I don't think they still know what happened to this young lady. It's been, it's that case is still being investigated. And they trying to say that this young woman committed suicide. And this has been going on throughout the country. So yes, again, you guys have to really realize what's going on. We see these cases on TV, we read about them, we talk about them on social media, but we don't realize that this shit can happen to us, if you're not aware of what's going on or aware of your surroundings, because what's been going on is a lot of these events that they've been at, man, these been events where, where alcohol is involved, alcohol has been involved. You know, and if you think about it, a lot of cases that we've been talking about, when you're finding, when a lot of our people have been coming up dead, alcohol has been involved in, you know, probably I'll say 60% of these cases. You know, so you got to watch who you drink with, you got to watch out who you party with, you know, because they can be plotting on your death. You know, as we see, you know, as the cases that we've been hearing about, you know, that we've been seeing over the months and over the years, you know, in my opinion. You know, Maria had another comment, John Ovell K7. And I don't have my glasses on, you guys, so excuse me. Interesting. He said, if it was the other way around, bet there would be a whole lot of people arrested. And it was a tragedy for Nolan. Yes, you know, and I said that, you know, earlier. If the shoe was on the other foot, you know, if it was a boat full of black folks and they had a white boy on his boat and he died and he didn't make it back, and they sent motherfuckers out there to search the island originally and they didn't find them, and then the next day they found them after you hear about you know, these black boys was cleaning out the boat that night. Listen, they would have had every last one of them ninjas locked up, you know, and you know, and I'm just gonna be frank. Every nigga who would have been involved that would have been on that boat would have been interrogated, would have been locked up with no bond, no bail, until they found out who the fuck did what they did to you know, to this white boy. You know, and I'm just gonna be honest, you know, and we know that, you know, and most whites know that. They try to turn the blind eye when the shoe ain't on the other foot, but when it's on the other foot, you know, all hell will break loose. It's a tragedy. You know, they're giving all resources. You know, they would have been given every fucking resource that they would have been able to need to solve that case. You know, that forensics analyst who broke that shit down, they would have been had that done if it was black folks who had called in there and needed help and rescue, you know, because that was a cover-up. You know, that was a cover-up trying to give them an alibi, you know, and trying to buy them time on what the fuck they did to that young man. You know, and we don't know how true. There's been a lot of videos coming back, you know, showing them on the beach and showing that it was a young man down in the sand. You know, he looked like he was intoxicated, barely moving. It looked like they were stomping on him, and just, you know, and as we know in the past, we saw plenty of photos of black men being shot to death, and it's been crowds of white folks around, standing around, you know, and that's like in the old days where in the Jim Crow days where they were lynching, you know, and you know, and they would even invite everybody from the town to come out and watch as they burn and lynch, you know, blacks that they would kill. You know, they were excited about shit like that. These are the type of people that we're dealing with, you know, and white folks that, you know, that don't have nothing to do with this, or that's not racist, or you know, and I'm just being straight up honest. These are what your ancestors did. You know, they would get out there in mobs and watch blacks be lynched and hanged. They would cut their penis and their Johnsons and shit like that off, you know, do horrible things, you know, and just sit there and watch. And they would even have their kids out there watching this shit. You know, these are the type of people that we've been dealing with, that we forgot that we've been dealing with, you know, and I think we forgot. You know, and I think that's what's really going on with my people. We forgot what type of motherfuckers we've been dealing with. You know, these are some evil, you know, wicked, twisted motherfuckers, you know, and for these motherfuckers to try to cover this shit up, and this was a so-called friend. He called these motherfuckers they friends, and they betrayed him and did this shit to him. You know, and it's been going on since the beginning of time, you know, y'all, you know, nothing has changed. You know, and that's realistic, you know, and that's, I mean, real, you know, and that's real talk. You know, nothing has changed, you know, how whites feel about blacks, you know, and it shows in the justice system. You know, most of our blacks, when you hear about anything that's dealing with the justice system, especially with the police, you'll never hear about white officers, or let alone black officers, shooting motherfuckers in the back that's running away. You know, if you have black officers shooting white boys in the back, literally they would literally be stripped of their what do you call that? You know, they would literally be stripped of their badge, their rights to be an officer and all that, and will be indicted. They wouldn't buy that shit. That's why you don't hear about black cops in white areas or at all about blacks shooting whites in the back and shit like that. They don't even patrol their areas and things like that. They only interrogate and patrol our areas where they think they can lock up a bunch of blacks and create and generate money. That's why they do it. And it's almost like a ritual, that they can get away with when they shoot motherfuckers in the back that's fleeing and running away from them. You cannot shoot a motherfucker in the back that's running away from you and then and claim that you were afraid for your life. That's a bunch of bullshit that we've realized that they've been saying for years. You just recently, this motherfucker, the Asian motherfucker, Rick Chang, excuse me if I'm getting his name mixed up, but I just did it. We talked about that. And that was just a case where you had this Asian guy who chased his young man out of the store because they thought that he stole a bottle of water. They in the justice system, they allow for this motherfucker to chase this young man over 100 yards. He said he feared for his son's life. His son actually chased the fucking young man up out of the store. So they chased this young man down, shot him in the motherfucking back, and the justice system said they had the right to stand their ground after chasing this motherfucker down. Now, if that was a black man and his son who did that to a white boy, all hell would have broke loose. So that's all we trying to say with these cases that's been going on throughout the country when you've been having blacks dying in the hands of so-called white friends, and then just with these so-called drownings, these so-called hangings that's been going on that they've been calling suicides. We know blacks are not hanging themselves, for just alone what happened to our ancestors. Ain't no niggas gonna just really just hang themselves. And let's just keep it real with that. Most blacks, if they're gonna commit suicide, it'll be on some pill type shit, taking some pills or some other shit. It will not be, by a motherfucker hanging themselves. And I know you probably have some people saying yes, that their family member did that, but it's rare. It's 1 in a million that you'll find that. When you find that niggas hanging or dead, it's probably through the hands of someone else, that don't look like them. So yeah, man, I just want to come in here for a quick second, talk about this injustice system that's going on down there in Mississippi. It's clearly a cover up. It's been a cover up from the beginning, from the so-called friends all the way down to their parents, making these so-called friends lawyer up, not speaking, and even from the adults not speaking about what's been going on because they know their children, I'm quite sure, probably have come to them, and explained to them what's going on, because if we see all this shit popping up to social media, best believe they're shaking and they're nervous in their boots, and they've opened up and they're talk to their parents, so and then with this hotline and that reward that they got out, definitely someone's going to talk. But even with that, we don't even need no one to talk. With this evidence that this forensic voice analyzer just broke down, it's a clear case. It's a clear case, a closed case, I should say. After they indict these young men, and and they get their own examiner to come and analyze that voice and break it down, because it's these friends, and we knew from the beginning, and again, I want to thank everybody who talked about all these cases that I'm talking about, especially with this Nolan Wells case. And then one thing that we cannot forget about, and someone else talked about that, we cannot forget about this Carmelo Anthony case. This is what they want us to do. They want us to take all the, they want us to take all the publicity and all the, the stuff that we had, basically all the, the backings that Carmelo had with us in the beginning, because it's quiet up since this Nolan Wells case. So we got to continue talking about this Carmelo Anthony case too, and keeping that alive, because now what's going on, all the focus have shifted over to this Nolan Wells case, and that's what I was trying to say originally, so, but yeah, we have to keep all these cases talked about. We have to keep all these cases up and going alive. We got to make these police do their jobs and investigate every every last one of these cases thoroughly. You know, no sweeping none of these cases up under the rug no more. You know, because I'm going to try to make sure I do my due diligence. And you got other guys that's you know, out there that's leading the front. You know, like I said, Willie D. Taylor Public Housing. They're talking about this daily, all day. You know, and I'm amongst the fight. You know, it's a fight, you know, to try to get justice. And it shouldn't even be like that. It should automatically be justice, you know, because at the end of the day, you know, we're all human, you know, but we've allowed, you know, our counterparts to separate us. And this is why we get this racial divide, you know, but it's always going to be a racial divide, you know, because this is how they capitalize on making their fucking money, by keeping us divided with this racial bullshit, you know. So at the end of the day, man, you know, that's what's going on. You know, the country is definitely split and divided by this, you know, but most whites, man, who's honest about what's going on, they see what's going on, you know, it's a lie, you know, it's a cover up. So, you know, do your due diligence and, you know, and just trying to speak the truth and tell the truth, because there's a lot of white folks out there that's, you know, on social media that's speaking the truth about this case, and they see that, you know, how blacks are being railroaded, you know, throughout this country since we've been in this country. You know, we have to realize that this country is not set up for us to win. You know, it's set up for our counterparts to win, you know, in every which way and fashion of how this government is set up. You know, and K.O. McGarvin 2007 said he drowned in a story racist piles of trash. You know, see, and this is a clear racist right here. You know, for you to say that he drowned, you stupid fuck, you know, and his lungs wouldn't even they didn't even give his lungs over to the medical examiner to examine, you know, and then the first medical examiner didn't even say there were water in his lungs for them to even rule that he drowned. So for you to say that, you a stupid fuck, you know, and a racist fuck, you know, because clearly he didn't drown, you know, clearly they're covering this shit up, you know, because that's why they didn't send the lungs over, you stupid fuck. And it's nothing, no fake news. This is a fact, you know, because the autopsies were already read and that shit came out, you stupid fuck. You know, so, but yeah, man, you know, I hate when, you know, see, and this is the shit that I talk about when, you know, and this is motherfucking K.O. McGarvin. He's probably a white racist motherfucker. You know, these are the motherfuckers that make it bad for the good white folks, you know, for him to come in here and say fuck shit like that, you know, chimping out, you know. But look what happened to that motherfucker, Chud the Builder. I guarantee you he chimping out now. He in there with a bunch of gorillas crying, chimping out, you know, and you know what, and I ain't even gonna let you work me up, but yeah, now that motherfucker chimping out, guarantee you. You know, and it's motherfuckers like you know, I'm glad you made that comment. You know, motherfuckers like you, when you make comments, it show your true colors. You know, because real people who just want to see cases that we're talking about solved, it's really not a color. It's just really about the truth, you know, and that's all that, you know, most blacks want, you know, and the righteous white folks want, you know, they just want the truth, you know, regardless of what color or what race you are, I should say. You know, Dim Hawk 5356, and let me back that up. 5356 said, listening to the audio, everything happened on the boat. Yeah, you know, and see, in that we still don't know, because even listening to the audio, he could have already been dead and they could have put him on the boat and was taking him wherever they was taking him. But yeah, you know, we know clearly from the audio, we know he was dead, and we know that these motherfucking so-called friends had something to do with it. So when you have motherfuckers like what's the racist motherfucker who just made the comment come in and say that he drowned, when we clearly know that this young man didn't drown, because if he did, we know for a fact that would have been the first thing that the medical examiner, you know, which this medical examiner, she's already been up under scrutiny for mislabeling and mishandling, you know, black cases like this, exactly like this. You know, dead in front of 1,000 people on an island and nobody seen anything. All fucking dumb. You know, nah, these motherfuckers saw something. Them friends saw something, you stupid fuck. You know, so they saw something. They just hiding and covering it up. You know, we not gonna let y'all try to pull that banana in the tailpipe on that. We know it was thousands of motherfuckers out there, but these 4 friends, and we're going to exclude the other people that was out there because they didn't have anything to do with this, whether they saw it or not. We know the 4 friends definitely had something to do with it. That's why this young man is not alive today. But yeah, I'm gonna let stupid fucks like Kale McGarvin just, look, he's a stupid fuck. Hey, you know what? Come on in. Give me your email and I'll bring you in. Yeah, and that's what I said. It sounds like Bart to me. That's why the friends are like, Bart, Bart, that motherfucker got a lot of answers, questions that we need to be answered, I should say. But yeah, them friends, everyone on that boat, they know exactly what happened to that young man. And it's crazy to think that this young man called these people his friends. You know what I mean? It's horrible to think that. And it's going to put a damper on, things going forward in race relationships, because it's a ton of black folks out here that are cool with a bunch of white folks that do go out there and hang with them, and that's cool, and that's cool as fuck, so it's going to put a lot of, indifferences between actual good friends, out here because of shit like that, because look, I wouldn't be traveling with a group of my white friends after, what's been going on throughout the country and be the only, Lone Star there. But, at the end of the day, man, we just got to be careful, because like I said, this definitely, we definitely see what's going on. We see what's been going on throughout the country, because white folks, y'all have to admit, and I don't know if you guys follow a lot of these things, but it's been too many of these so-called suicidal hangings that's been going on. Black folks don't hang themselves, and we know, throughout history, what your ancestors and what your people have done to our people, so we know who started this hanging shit. Yeah, they listen, and this is why this is going to be another show that we're going to talk about. They fucking with you Hispanics and Mexicans because they're trying to get rid of you they trying to get rid of the numbers. Because they're already outnumbered, but they're trying to get you guys numbered lowered over here in the US. That's why they're pushing y'all back. Giving y'all so much flack, but and Dim Hawk said Mississippi just ain't it. People should be able to live where they want, but I've been there once and it's very oppressive. Yeah, when you get towns like Mississippi and they still got a lot of these motherfucking laws on the book that that was horrible and and that allowed for horrible shit to go on to blacks down there. But yeah, a lot of these towns and cities that we talk about we still have a lot of these sundown towns where a lot of these blacks that that I've talked about have been coming up missing. So look, racism is still going on. It has never stopped. The mainstream media has done their best job at covering it up, from the mainstream people, from the masses, I should say. But we're doing our job to keep this shit going, to keep our people aware of what's going on, because like I said, if the mainstream media is not really talking about this, a lot of people won't really know what's going on, but like I said, I want to thank, most of the podcasters that have been out here talking about this shit, keeping this shit on the forefront, keeping it alive, because without that, a lot of this stuff probably would have been pushed up under the rug and swept up under the rug. But like I said, don't forget about the Carmelo Anthony case that's been going on too, because we focus a lot of our attention to this Nolan Wells case, and we've forgotten about what's going on with this young man. This young man is still going to need our help. He's still going to need our backing. To try to get this retrial, So look, I want to thank everybody who made comments, and we're probably going to come back a little later on and talk about this case, because this is a case that's, like I said, that's well spoke about throughout the country. You have hundreds of podcasters talking about this case. It's a case that's, close to a lot of people's heart, because this young man could have been my son. He could have been your son. He could have been your brother, sister, so yeah, things like this cannot continue to be swept up under the rug. We have to continue doing our job, talking about things like that, you know, and putting all the information that comes out there so that we can force, you know, law enforcement down in Mississippi to do their job, you know, because like I said, like how the one forensic, the black young lady who broke down the forensic analyzer, they could have been did that shit and broke that shit down if they wanted to hear what the fuck was going on. They didn't want to do that shit because they didn't want to put that shit out so we can hear it and put the motherfucking you know, put pressure on the authorities. You know, now it's about to be a lot of pressure on them going forward. I guarantee you. You know, so look, man, we are closing in on 1K subscribers. We are less than 50 away. I need for each and every one of you guys to please hit that subscribe button. You know, it's going to help the channel grow. It's going to help content like this get out. So I cannot do it without you guys hitting that, that subscribe button and sharing it. You know, but cases like this, I definitely make sure you guys need to share this and like it so it can get out. So, you know, therefore, more people can be informed of what's going on, because like trust, best and believe, you know, it's probably a lot of people that do not know what's going on with this case. You know, I mean, you kind of got to be sleeping up under a rock if you don't know what's going on, but it's a lot of people that do not, my bad, know what's going on with this case. Yep. So, you know, I'm going to continue to do my due diligence. I'm going to continue to talk about this. Thanks for the sub. I appreciate you. You know, it goes a long way. Like I said, we've been closing down on 1,000 subscribers. It's been our goal, you know, since we set out 2 years ago and started doing this. But I appreciate everybody who's made a comment, who's shared, and who's subscribed. You know, but at the end of the day, man, I hate to make things seem like they're racial, you know, but it is what it is. You know, you have a group of so-called white friends that took this young black man out there on this boat ride, and he didn't make it back, you know, alive to his parents. So, you know, it is what it is. You know, it's always going to be a racial divide when you have a case, you know, dealing with whites and blacks, you know, so that's why that's where we're at now. You know, so, but the whole thing, it shouldn't be a racial thing. It should just be about a young man who lost his life and people wanting to see justice for this young man. That's what it should be about. You know, don't you guys agree? Now, look, and I'm gonna ask all the racist whites that's in here making these racist, fucking stupid racist comments. You know, at the end of the day, shouldn't it just be about a young man who lost his life and you guys wanting justice for him? That's really what it should be, you know, but we got stupid motherfuckers that, you know, that want to divide the country and make it a racial thing, you know, which, you know, at the end of the day, it is what it is. You know, when we're dealing with whites and blacks and someone losing their life, it's always going to divide the country, you know, and it's always going to be drawn up as a racial thing. You know, I understand that. Yeah, but at the end of the day, them friends, they know exactly what happened to Nolan Ryan. We're going to keep his name alive, you know, and I want to thank that for that voice forensic analyzer. She broke it down. I think that was the biggest, you know, the biggest thing leaked. Well, not even going to say leak. I think that was the biggest thing that that the prosecutors, that Ben Crump, will have to be able to produce to this grand jury. You know, with no doubt, after hearing this, you know, and I'm quite sure that that the states, they're going to go and do their due diligence and do the same thing, like how Nolan Wells and Ben Crump and them did a second autopsy. They're probably going to have a second voice analyzer to reanalyze what we heard. You know, and you can't lie. You know, this woman, she didn't make this shit up. She broke it down, and we heard what we heard. You know, you even heard the white girl, you know, and all these people, and you can hear the same shit that was on the boat when she didn't break it down. Like she said, go back and listen to the original, come and listen to what she broke down. You can hear them. Is Nolan dead? Oh my God, he's dead. Can we cover this up? You know, so that's exactly what they were doing, you know, in a time of calling for help and rescue. The boat probably was not sinking. They just probably were just trying to get their alibi together. You know, so again, you know, these are cases that we've been talking about all month long, all summer long. You know, you've been finding a lot of black people dying in the hands of, you know, I'm just going to be honest, they're white friends. You know, and I'm just going to be honest about that. You can't call motherfuckers your friends if you're dying, you know, when you're in the company of them. You know, and that's a fact. You know, and then when they try to cover it up, you know, if you were a friend and it was truly an accident, you would say that shit. You know, that's all they had to say. It was an accident. You know, he drowned, or if y'all was playing around, because this is what white folks do. They get drunk and they lollygag and they do a lot of lollygagging and playing. It could have been an accidental, drowning, or accidental, like they hit him upside the head or some type shit like that. But if it was, just say that. You guys don't made yourself look guilty, and now you don't have blacks invested in this case, and they don't went in and Matt locked his motherfucking case and broke it down. What up, though, Q Nitty? Q Jackson said Nolan Wells is it's some evil white folks in this world. They love us and hate us at the same time. Yes, and that's a fact, Q. Because we just talked about this thing the other day where you get whites now that's taking melanin injections, and now they have them where you can put it in their drinks. They also hate us, but now trying to get our same skin color. So the hypocrisy of of whites. And it's not all. But the few bad apples make it bad for all of them. But at the end of the day, man, it shouldn't be about that. It should be about this young man getting justice for his life that was lost. This was a young man who had his future ahead of him. He was a college student looking to further his career in football, and then looking most and foremost to get his degree and further his education, and they took that from this young man. They took everything that they took a young man from his family. This young man, they took away what his parents could have been grandparents. They took that opportunity away from them, and that's all we're trying to say. And this is what's been going on throughout the country. You've been having a lot of blacks dying, in the so-called hands of their so-called white friends, and that's what's been going on. It's a lot of hatred, it's a lot of jealousy, and it's a lot of envy, that's been going on, and that's involved in these deaths. And most of these young folks that's died, and these so-called suicidals, they were young, they had everything to live for, they had their futures ahead of them. And there's signs, every family talked about that. Like with the young man that I just talked about, who was found hung, who almost died. And luckily that young man didn't die at the music festival. He was the only one that survived, and he's still in critical condition. So hopefully he'll have a full cover, and one day he'll be able to talk about what happened to him. Listen, I don't have to prove it. And I'm gonna read out that comment, because it's going to be proved. Josh Montgomery said if it was, please prove it. Time to wait. Yeah, I don't have to prove it. It's going to be proved. The evidence has been coming out. We're just waiting. We're going to take our time. No need to rush. Because a lot of them is telling on itself with all the evidence that's coming out. And Dim Hawk said, was it any other black kid on the boat? From my knowledge and from what their show, he was the only black kid on that boat. Yeah, he was the only black kid on that boat. Correct me if I'm wrong. But from what we saw from the pictures in the video, he was the only one on that boat. Yeah, but look, man, I need for you guys to like, comment, subscribe, and share. We've been on here for an hour. It's definitely been a good talk, good conversation. I just wanted to bring the knowledge that I've gotten, from other information that I've gotten, about this forensics analyst who broke down the actual phone call from when Nolan Wells' so-called friends call for an emergency. That young man was on a boat at that time, because you can hear them calling his name, Nolan, is Nolan dead? So we know it's a cover up. So I can't wait for the state to get on their job, and I can't wait for Ben Crump to come back on and make some more announcements, because once they, and I'm quite sure they know, and they heard this and they got the evidence, and they're breaking it down. They probably sent their own forensic team analyzer to break down that voice analyze that the young woman did. So I'm quite sure they're on it. They know what's going on, and it's just more evidence for them to be able to provide to a grand jury for indictments, and that's getting ready to go on, you guys. You know, so look, I'm not going to be on here any more longer. Joshua Montgomery said, yes, there were other black kids on the boat. Some have come out and did interviews. Yeah, and I think they were lying and trying to cover up, because if you go and look at the actual video of the conversation that we're talking about when he was on the boat that the forensic analyzer just broke down, you can go and find the videos because they're out there. You can actually see that he was the only black one on that boat out of the 7 people that was on that boat. So I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one, Josh. You know, at that time, he was the only black person on that boat, in my opinion, from what I saw from the video, I should say, or the still shots, because it was video and still shots too. You know, so they're all out there. You just have to look around, and you know, and they're not hard to find. You know, because like I said, you know, it's a lot of podcasters that's talking about this. But look, what you guys need to do: go and look and listen to this forensic analyzer. Listen to this video, because once you hear that, you'll be agreeing. It'll be a clear-cut a clear-cut case of what's going on, that these friends know exactly what happened to this young man's life. You know, so look, again, I need for you guys to hit that subscribe button. Your boy is less than 50 subscribers away from 1K. You know, and it's going to help the channel continue to grow. You know, so look, and also I need for you guys to make sure that you're hitting and you're sharing, you know, because stories like this need to continue to get out. So therefore, more people can hear about this and talk about this and keep these stories alive. You know, that's what goes on. The mainstream media, you know, at one point, were the main source where we can get our news and information from, but no longer. You know, you have a lot of people out here that's talking about cases like this, that's you know, that's doing their own journalism and that's putting out, you know, information to the people. You know, so look, I'm not going to hold you guys up any longer. It's been another one. It's another one. It's your boy Damn D, and I am out. And don't forget to make sure you hit that subscribe button. Peace.